When I say the word passport, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it something like this blue booklet that is an official piece of government documentation that identifies you and what country you're from? Largely, I find passports to be kind of innocuous. They've existed for the most part since around 1850, and they're used for people to go from country to country. How about if I say vaccine passport? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Or carbon passport? Well, for me, the first thing I think of is just another tool that governments are going to be using to limit my liberty and free mobility. Now, if you're not familiar with the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, I highly suggest you do some research into them. If you go to Google and type in WEF and Great Reset, you'll be taken to this website. Some people want to go and write off the Great Reset as being some kind of right-wing conspiracy theory, but let me ask you something. Does a conspiracy theory have a website? A website that is owned and run by the very organization that is pushing it? Of course not. The World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab are telling you exactly what they're wanting to do, and this whole thing with the carbon passport is no exception. Now, another website I also highly recommend going and checking out is Reclaim the Net, because it is a site that is dedicated to fighting for your online rights and privacy, and this is where this article comes from. Carbon passports are the next dystopian surveillance threat, part of proposed digital ID future. The idea of digital IDs is, quite frankly, nothing new. We saw a lot of this stuff pop up during 2020, specifically when it came to who had the jab and who had not. And vaccine passports were going to be used as a means of forced compliance. The idea behind it is that if you didn't get the poke, well, you simply wouldn't be allowed to go to certain places, potentially other states, or even so far as going to the grocery store. And for the most part, everybody knew that the pandemic eventually was going to go away at some point, and they're going to be forced to go to the next big thing, which is the environment. Using apocalyptic imagery, you could basically convince an entire population that they should give up their rights in order to make sure that the planet is saved in some form or fashion. And sadly, you would be surprised at how willful people are for trading in their liberties for draconian policies. And the carbon passport is probably going to be another example of this. The digital ID agenda is already on the horizon, but it doesn't have to stop there. Digital carbon passports are the next big proposal. Travel enthusiasts worldwide might soon face drastic changes in exploring international borders, with global warming triggering the implementation of a carbon passport that could limit their wanderlust, asserts Intrepid Travel in a recently published report. Now, there is a link that will take you to the Wayback Machine, so you can go and pull the PDF of this report, but you can also go and click on the link, which will take you to it. You can go and download it and read it offline, which I highly recommend that you go and do, because this article does not cover everything that is in the PDF. Dubbing these restrictions as personal carbon allowances, the report pretends they would serve as determinants compelling individuals to conform to the global carbon budget. The translation for this is that if you don't go and conform to the global carbon budget system, your life and your lifestyle will be greatly hampered based off of the amount of carbon that is used in your lifestyle, which ultimately means that your carbon footprint will be used against you and restrict your mobility and your access to resources. So here's another example of what I'm talking about. I think for the most part, most people have a smart meter on their home. And let's say because of the carbon budget system, you've been using too much energy. What do you think is going to happen? Most likely, the energy company will just simply turn off your power. By 2025, they want to have remote kill switches in all new vehicles. It's going to be sold as, we're going to be using it to stop criminals and car theft. Which on its surface sounds great, right? But reality is, well, you've been driving too much. We're going to turn off your vehicle. That's the whole idea behind these carbon budgets. And the carbon passport is no different. Sure, all this sounds like a bunch of crazy conspiracy nonsense until you read the articles that basically saying that this is what they're planning on doing. Now, directly taken from the PDF document, which I just referenced, is this section on carbon passports. A person's carbon emission limit will become the new normal as policy and people's values drive an era of great change. As demonstrated by a worldwide tourism boom, the frequency at which we can fly is once again seemingly unlimited. And again, you can see here that unlimited mobility is being framed as a bad thing, because it's bad for the environment, of course. Conscience and budget permitting, we feel free to hop on a plane from one place to the next. But this will change. Our current trajectory, we can expect a pushback against the frequency with which individuals can travel. with carbon passports set to change the tourism landscape, says Raymond. Now, one of the words I want to point out that they used in this passage is conscience. And the reason why they use it is because if they can convince you to go and willingly give up your liberties, it's a lot easier to force through draconian measures. After all, people are a lot easier to control when they actually go and buy into it. If you are resistant to policies, well, that's where things can get a bit messy. All you have to do is go and take a look at any totalitarian regime. Personal carbon allowances could help curb carbon emissions and lower travelers' overall footprint. These allowances will manifest as passports that force people to ration their carbon in line with the global carbon budget, which is 150 billion tons until 2050. By 2040, we can expect to see limitations imposed on the amount of travel that is permitted each year. Experts suggest that individuals should currently limit their carbon emission to 2.3 tons each year, the equivalent of taking a round trip from Rio de Janeiro to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. However, the average carbon footprint in the US is still 16 tons per person per year, 15 tons in Australia, and 11.7 tons in the UK. This is a stark contrast to where we may find ourselves in the future, with 2040s travelers forced to forego their horizon expanding experiences so rapidly embraced by today's tourists. And all this is being done under the guise of climate alarmism. If you don't give up your liberties and rights now, well, we'll simply just take them from you in the future. You are the useless carbon they want to eliminate. Remember, folks, freedom is always on the right side of history. This is Ian, signing off.